Hello everyone. We've got another rifle project I've been working on here. I just figured I'd do a video. I drew a Kodiak bear tag this year. So in preparation for that, I'm kind of building up this Remington 700 KS for my Kodiak hunt. I picked this up on Gunbroker. If you're not familiar with the 700 KSs, they were made in the Remington custom shop. I'm not sure if they're still being made or not. This one was made in 1994, so almost 30 years ago now. It has a Macmillan stock on, and I'm not sure who makes the barrels. I've heard that they were Krieger barrels. I'm not sure, but at any rate, it's a 700 KS, chambered in 375 H&H. So I'm building it up for my Kodiak hunt and did a few things on here that I thought I would showcase, maybe give some of you ideas. Not only is this going to be my Kodiak rifle, this is probably going to be my general moose rifle and bear rifle, especially for boat hunts or where I might be, extended stays in inclement weather. So to start with, this one had a sling swivel stud in the forearm to match the rear stud. I filled that hole and painted over it, and I mounted a Talley. This is a Talley barrel band. Just in heavier recoiling rifles, I prefer that. You don't have to worry about the sling stud getting into your offhand when you're firing under recoil. And let's be honest, I think they look pretty cool as well, especially on a heavier caliber rifle. It came with the brake. It's a removable brake. I think I'm going to utilize it. As it is right now, this rifle weighs just a hair under 7 pounds. So it's fairly light for a 375. So I think I'm going to leave the brake on it. I'm not getting any younger, and I don't really feel like getting kicked around by a heavy recoiling rifle. I put this is the Masterpiece banded front sight from New England Custom Gunsmithing. Put that on there. When I bought it, it obviously had a clean barrel other than the brake. I'll put this front sight on. I got the Masterpiece hood on here. I put a set of quick detachable scope bases on from Leupold. These are Leupold's quick detachable bases. And for this rifle, I really think that a fair amount of the time I'm going to be using it without a scope. So I prefer, if I'm going to be using iron sights, I prefer a good receiver sight, peep sight, aperture sight, as opposed to, a notch sight on the barrel. So what I did, for some of the Weaver type bases, and I think the Talley bases, they have a backup peep sight. There was nothing available for the Leupold quick detach bases. So kind of put my thinking cap on, and I bought an extra set of the quick detachable rings, and I cut the ring portion away. Milled, well, I say milled, you could certainly do it with a mill. I used my belt sander, but here, I'll show you. Here's an extra one I have. This started life as a quick detach ring. You can see the notch there where the cam engages. So this is just a Leupold quick release ring that I cut down, and that's so with this one is the same. So what I did is I bought an extra set of rings, cut it down, drilled and tapped. This is 864 threads for a New England Custom Gunsmithing peep aperture. So when I'm not using the scope, I just drop this sight in, and I was able to regulate it. You know, I tapped on the Masterpiece front sight. I was able to regulate, tap that front sight where I needed it to get the windage, because this has no windage adjustment, just elevation. I was able to zero it using the windage of the front sight before I permanently installed it with red Loctite and epoxy. So that's how I was able to zero the combination. It works really well. In addition to that, I was concerned that when you have a scope on here, these quick release levers are somewhat protected by the scope tube, and I'll show you here in a minute when I mount the scope. But these quick release levers they kind of are under the contour of the scope, and they're somewhat protected. Without the scope mounted, I was concerned about losing my aperture if I would, you know, bump this lever, and then this would just simply fall out, or that was my fear. So what I did, and it worked out like it was meant to be, or it was made for it. I went on a website called NECG Magnetics. I bought two of them. I actually bought quite a few magnets of varying sizes. They're useful for other things. You can stick them to the side of your screwdriver if you're dealing with a fine work or for retrieving items. But I wasn't sure what size I'd end up using, so I got a few different ones. They're very inexpensive. But this is the one that ended up working the best. I ended up, it's the NECG Magnetics D52N52. So with this magnet, if you take this on a 700 at least, different rifle actions are going to have different depths. But with this magnet, it's an interference fit with the Leupold quick release. It's an interference fit with the bore diameter. So I took this rear base off, flipped it upside down, and I was able to drive this magnet in from the bottom. And I just drove that magnet in flush with the bottom of the scope base. So what that does for me, even if I would flip this lever, this sight is not going to fall out of there. It takes pretty good effort to pluck that sight out. If you can look down in the hole there, you can see the shiny magnet. It got that magnet down in the scope base. So this is a Leupold 2-7. I have the long range duplex reticle in this. You know, if I want to use the rifle scope, that drops in, secure it with the levers, and as you can see, these levers are well protected by the scope. I'm probably not going to accidentally bump them, but even if I would, I think that magnet in here would keep me from losing my scope as well, because even with the weight of the scope, you have to pull up with a little bit of effort. To get that scope to come off. So there you can see it just kind of snaps in there with the magnet, and then the lever just holds it in the proper orientation. But it stays put. That magnet, I think the specs on K&J's website is this magnet is supposed to lift 4.5 pounds. It's fairly heavy duty magnet for its size. Really happy with that. You know, for a moose rifle where it's raining or you're floating a river on a rainy, wet morning, the aperture sight, the peep sight, just makes a lot more sense than having a rifle scope. You have to worry about keeping the lenses clear. So, yeah, really happy how that turned out. I had thought, you know, I was kind of thinking what I could do for a peep sight, and this turned out awesome. Thought I'd talk about a few other things. If any of you out there have one of these 700 KS's, I discovered this paint. This is Rust-Oleum textured dark pewter. That's 7221 dark pewter. It is a perfect match for the Remington 700 KS stock. You can see the stock here. When I replaced when I replaced the sling swivel with the band, I sprayed pretty much the underside of the stock with this, and it's a perfect match. I mean, I can't tell where one paint starts and another stops. So if you have a 700 KS that's kind of getting some use, this works great for touching up. Or if you have a 700 stock and you just like this color, this is a perfect match to the 700 KS. Yeah, aside from that, I intend to make a separate video. I think I've said in previous videos, I really like the 700s. I'm a big Remington 700 fan. I realize they do have some shortcomings. If you've seen my previous videos, I've already done the trigger. I've connected the connector to the trigger on this rifle. That's already done. I also swapped in the older bolt lock safety, which is another essential item in my mind. I'm not trying to convince anybody else, but for me, for a serious big game rifle, the bolt has to lock shut when the safety's on. You see bolts locked shut. That's how Remington 700s were prior to 1982. So I swapped in the bolt lock safety. The safety, the barrel band, and the Masterpiece front sight and hood, they were steel. This was blued. These came into white. I sent them out and had them hard chromed. So that they're hard chromed. It does a pretty good job of matching the stainless, and it should make them corrosion resistant. The other thing I'm going to do on this rifle, I kind of alluded to a little bit earlier, and I've done this to quite a few of my 700s that I hunt with. I'm a big fan of the 700. I think that you know, the whole push feed versus controlled round feed. To me, that never carried much weight. You know, I've killed my grizzly with a 700. I've used it for moose hunting. I've never had a failure as far as like the whole push feed. As long as you work the action correctly, I don't think there's a nickel's worth of difference. With that being said, this is something I do to my 700s I use for big game hunting. I do add a second ejector. This is something that Pacific Tool and Gauge, you can buy aftermarket bolts that have double ejectors. The plunger ejector is it's a potential failure point. It's never happened to me. It would be really difficult for it to happen, but if you had an overpressure round where that ejector shaves brass off your case head, you could potentially have a stuck ejector. Redundancy is not a bad thing in my mind. So the stock 700s come with this ejector, and I actually drill the bolt and install the top ejector. And I've tested this. The rifles eject well with one or the other. In other words, I would assemble the bolt with one ejector and try it both ways. I mean, obviously it works with the bottom ejector. That's the way they come from the factory. But I've installed only the top ejector, and it ejects brass fine. So this bolt is out of a 300 Weatherby, but I'm just using it to illustrate. This bolt I haven't done it to yet, and I'll probably do that in a separate video. But I'm going to drill this bolt, install the second ejector, show you how I do that. And that's just for peace of mind. Again, I've never had a failure with that ejector, the 700, but the way I see it, there's no harm in having two in case one does fail. And it does, with both of them working, it makes for rather energetic ejection. You should never have any problem. And if for some reason one would fail, it never hurts to have a backup. So anyhow, hope you enjoyed this video. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments. I'll try to answer. And stay tuned. I plan on adding a video with my ejector project. I think that's about all though for this video.